Welcome to DR TSPR show. This is Dr. Tangella Shiva Prasad Reddy alias Dr. TSPR. Namaste, Adab, hello and a warm welcome to Dr. Narasimha Reddy Dunti. He is a policy expert and we have been doing some good shows. Now today's show is very important. I'm just limiting myself in the introduction. An important show. It should be a curtain riser, but this will be released at the midnight on the eve of COP29, the conference which is going to be held in Azerbaijan. And what is COP all about? COP29 and climate change. And yesterday also interesting things happened in Bengaluru. The labor who have died in Bengaluru, that is because of intense rainfall, which was not expected in this type of weather. They said this is because of climate change. And they say this is because of they don't have insurance also to claim because of real estate corruption. All of a sudden, intense rainfall, all of a sudden, absolute heat, all of a sudden, intense cold. Before we used to have those weather changes, and we used to know these are the seasons: summer, the rainy season, winter or autumn, followed by all this. But are we enjoying those seasons now? What is happening with the weather conditions or climate? Why this change is happening? And what this confederation of parties they have been discussing in these 28 conferences? Are those discussions or are those mutually accepted or agreed conditions or terms have been implemented? If they were implemented, is there any effect in the living standards of the people across the globe in managing and maintaining these temperatures or these seasons, which we call, whether it is summer, rainy, or whatever it is? What are those effects or ill effects of these changes which are occurring in the name of development, utilizing more and more transport, more and more private vehicles, the emissions of carbon dioxide or methane, whatever you call, and the greenhouse gases? And top of that, if everything is becoming artificial, even our own thinking, we say artificial intelligence, in this era, what can we expect out of COP29 at Azerbaijan? The discussions, how good they will be in replicating the past so that our present and future is stable with good climate. Thank you, Narasimha Reddy garu. So the floor is yours. So you can present your PPT and go ahead, sir. Yeah, Narasimha Reddy. Your video. Yeah. Some technical issues. Yeah, please go ahead. You can present. You can share your PPT also, sir. Yeah, Narasimha Reddy. There is some technical hitch. We are trying to get him back. He's going to present his PPT. What would be the likely deliberations at COP29 in Azerbaijan in regards to the climate change, ineffectively considering what has happened in COP28, COP27, right from Paris, Dubai? These confederation of parties conferences, how good they have been? Are they really tracking and taking the changes which are occurring at the ground level, affecting the common citizens across the globe? And are they implementing it? In the name of development, what we have been watching all this while is erratic. So, meanwhile, I'll try to see if we can get him. Otherwise, I'll try to present the Azerbaijan story, if possible, before he joins. the Trump's win has given so many things for so many people to cheer about. And they say the climate or environment policies are not going to be part of his regime. How good they are, how true they are, only time will. And I'm admitting, Narasimha Reddy garu, there was some technical hitch. He's rejoining us. So just bear with us. These are minor hiccups. Yes, sir, please. I'll stop sharing so that you can go ahead, sir.
Yeah, sorry, I had a power cut.
This happens whenever you come onto my show, right from 2020.
Yeah, can you see the screen?
Yes, wonderfully well.
Okay, I think we are, as you have rightly introduced, uh, climate change conference is starting tomorrow at Baku in Azerbaijan. There are a lot of expectations on this COP29. We'll see what is that and what it means for India. I think that we need to discuss today. So, just for some historical knowledge, UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, it was adopted in 1992, almost no, 32 years back. And that was the first global agreement on climate change ever. Even today, I think that continues. And there are now 197 parties. So almost all the countries on this earth are part of this climate change agreement, which is again a unique feature. And every year since 1995, COP negotiations have been organized. So COP is a conference of parties. So conference of parties is what each country is. So when they are saying parties, it is a one country as a member, and then a delegation of that country. So now this COP as a mechanism has also become popular in all other international negotiations on different topics like UNEP, WHO, many other international treaties. They are adopting this COP mechanism. So basically, a COP is a General Assembly of the members of this framework convention, and they sit together, discuss, and arrive at a consensual agreements. So it has to be universal consensual agreements. There is no voting. It's always a complete agreement on whatever text is developed. So I think within this, there are milestones in the last 28 years, and one of them is Paris Agreement. What is called as Paris Agreement was arrived at in 2015, almost 20 years after the beginning of the COP.
Yeah, again, we are facing some technical hitches. As and when he appears on my show, there are these technical hitches, whether it is power or bandwidth. He's been there right from 2020 when DR-TSPR channels took birth on May 26, 2020, celebrating 4th anniversary. Yes, sir, please go ahead. I think now we are
Yeah.
back. Yeah, you are at Paris Agreement. So again, yes, sir, please. These things keep happening whenever you participate on my show. Nothing new. So this is what that is why we are not able to do live streaming, because whenever we announce a show, either the power is gone or the bandwidth is disabled. so that these type of technical interference, that is why the world should watch out what Dr. Narasimha Reddy Donti is speaking all about. Yeah, please, sir, go ahead. So he has given the mention of key years in global climate change negotiations, right from 1972 to 2024. The 1995 IPCC second assessment report published, 1995 first United Nations under that framework of Convention of Climate Change Conference of Parties, COP1 in Berlin, Germany. 1997 Kyoto Protocol agreed at COP3 in Kyoto, Japan. That is another milestone, which I'm just reading before Narasimha Reddy ji joins again and explains. Then 2001, yeah, unfortunately, again, he has to reconnect. This is what has been happening as and when Narasimha Reddy ji appears. When we discuss something which is policy affecting not just Hyderabad or Telangana state or India, but the entire world, such an important aspect, and these technical hitches keep happening. At least I hope the entire world is watching DRTSPR channels, how WhatsApp, Facebook, the Meta, how he has kneeled down in front of Senate, but still he wants to impose his dictates, gentlemen. Now he bought WhatsApp. The same thing is happening with before Twitter also. LinkedIn has already blocked DRTSPR channels. It's a shame on them. It's a shame on them. Yeah, please, sir. I think you need to rush through now. They will not allow you to present.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So, no, why I'm telling on this more because this year there is a lot of expectation because now it is almost 10 years the Paris Agreement has happened. Now there is an expectation for rewriting this nationally determined contribution. Basically, each country has declared that they are going to reduce their emissions through such and such plan, and each country has given some deadline. So most European and US kind of countries, developed countries, they gave 2030 as the deadline for reducing their emissions. India gave 2070. But China gave 2050. So each country did based on their own assessment of their economy, all and internal conditions. They have voluntarily submitted what kind of contribution each country will do, and that was given after COP21. But now in COP29, after 10 years, in fact, that was part of the agreement that they are going to review these plans. So, whatever national plans, they are going to review and announce new plans. So, that's why there is a expectation uh, in COP29 on this nationally determined contribution. So, of course, there are several key years in the last 29 years. So now we are in 2024 and COP29 is happening in Baku, Azerbaijan. So last year it happened in Dubai, and before that in Egypt, Sharm el Sheikh, and before that in Glasgow. So these four again hold a lot of significance for various reasons, which I keep mentioning through my talk. Now, where did they leave in COP28? I think that should be now an interesting thing because, and I know when the COP28 happened, the last day, a scheduled day was 13th December 23. But of course, again, it went up to one more day, almost 36 hours. So by day 14, that's the last final day, scheduled day, we can see where the negotiations were. So there are five texts on which, I mean, five areas on which there was no text at all. That means there was no agreement, not even a basic consensus. Then on 23 items, they did not agree anything at all. So they not agreed. And on, sorry, 23 not agreed, 26 nearly agreed, and 16 agreed. So overall, we can see at least 70 texts, different kinds of topics and subjects. These negotiations have happened, and now in COP29, they are going to discuss 77 streams of negotiation, which again includes a lot of what was done or what was agreed upon previously, and a continuation of some of those agreements or implementation. So some are at the stage of planning, some are at the stage of formulation, some are at the stage of implementation, and some are also being reviewed based on the current situation of the world climate. Now, again, if you look at the different kind of texts, so they postponed the adaptation committee report. Adaptation is again basically adapting to the climate events or disasters which are happening. Then Article 6.2 bilateral trading in carbon credits, carbon markets. So each of the item, many they have postponed because there was not enough time. That means there was not enough agreement on whatever has been brought onto the table. So basically, I'm trying to tell that this is not a easy negotiations which are happening. There are a lot of back and forth discussions happening, and there's no consensus on many issues. And that sometimes surprises us because when you look at the negotiation, they have been happening for the past 29 years. And in the last 28 years, they agreed only on few aspects of climate change. And that's again a concern. And when you look at what is happening outside, where climate disasters are repeating, the severity is increasing. So the grave situation which was painted by International Panel on Climate Change, does not seem to impinge on the negotiators, and they are wrangling over who gets what or how, that kind of situation. So that is sometimes a big concern. But apart from that, if you look at the decisions which are on the table, which they have to take, the implications of those decisions on the world population, especially the poor, sometimes is scary. So I think again, on the other hand, we look at some of those decisions or the negotiations. We feel who is there and why they are deciding on our behalf. I'll come to some of those issues. So the major expectations in COP29 is, no, they dubbed it this COP29 as Finance COP. That means, this COP, they are going to decide on a new collective quantified goal on climate finance. Now, this has been a discussion point in the last 10 years of climate change negotiations, especially because in Paris Agreement, climate finance has been agreed, and developed countries, they agreed to give $100 billion as finance to adapt and mitigate this climate change impacts in third world countries, especially small countries, island states, for them, because they are at the front of these climate impacts like sea level change, cyclones, heavy rains. So this climate finance was promised to mitigate and adapt at that level. But then, developed countries last year, COP28 and before COP27, they said we have already given $100 billion. So OECD said $100 billion has been given, but the other countries said, where is that finance? So there emerged the issue of defining climate finance. What is climate finance? So OECD feels they are given for this project and that project, which could be related to environment or climate change. So this definition became important now. And the other point is $100 billion was agreed per annum. That's what some countries say, but others say it was only $100 billion. And now the recent studies say that $100 billion is pittance. Now we have to talk about trillions of dollars. And now there are several studies which are done recently, and they say at least $4.5 trillion dollars of climate finance is required. So this wrangling is going on, but then who pays for that? So there, the historical responsibility has been brought. Developed countries which have been contributing to carbon emissions since 17th century and 18th century, because they had a head start in the industrial revolution. They had a head start in coal, fossil fuel consumption. So they said you have to pay. So inherently, the principle of polluter pays principle has been brought about. So developed countries are not agreeing to that, but ultimately, last in Egypt, some agreement was arrived at, and then this COP, they are going to come up with a new collective quantified goal. So what is that goal? How much will it be is still on the table. So they are expecting it be $1.5 trillion dollars, but we don't know. I think we have to wait for the negotiation period to see. And linked with this is loss and damage. Now, loss and damage is, countries which are innocent, whose contribution to climate carbon emissions is very low or zero. They are facing the impacts of the climate change. So this loss and damage is basically the response to the loss and damage which these countries are facing, like small island states, Marshall Islands or Mauritius, even Bangladesh. So these kind of countries are saying we are facing the loss and damage because of your indulgence, and so we need that. And again, in Egypt, it was dubbed as African COP. African countries came together and forcefully were able to bring loss and damage into the agreement, and ultimately there was a agreement to establish a loss and damage fund, and last year that was approved, and they established a fund, and that fund is being hosted by World Bank with its headquarters in Philippines. But now they have to work out the mechanisms of whom to pay, how to pay, and how to mobilize contribution for this loss and damage. So this again is going to be part of the uh, of this year. And as I mentioned, new nationally determined contribution. Now, Paris Agreement has happened in 2015. Now we are in 2024, almost 10 years. So now there is a expectation of new goals will be announced by various countries as part of their review because the climate change, as IPCC has given a report in 2022, code red. It said the situation is very bad and we have already crossed 1.5-degree mark, and now we are coasting towards a 2 degrees centigrade increase from the pre-industrial levels. So that means now we need ambitious goals, because if you want to contain and reduce global warming, because the future is a very serious concern. So this COP, people are expecting this NDCs to be reviewed, revised, and new plans are announced. The market approaches are also being announced, like as I mentioned, carbon credits. So some country is conserving forest, and that forest, some other country has pollution, so they can trade credits. That means this is a market approach to root finance and cooperation in conservation of environmental resources. Now, the other important aspect is national actions have been announced, but there is no transparency. No one knows which country is doing where, how much. So, transparency is being talked about. And there are many issues, as I mentioned, 77 streams of negotiations are there. Now, importantly, this COP, not many leaders are attending. Now, the interesting thing is, if you look at this latest data, emissions gap data by UNEP, China is the highest contributor in 2023. You can see the first column, and you followed by USA, followed by India, and followed by European Union, Russian Federation, Brazil. All these are part of G20. So that means G20 countries are on the top of the pile in the greenhouse gas emissions. But this year, it appears that none of the heads of the state are attending. So China has never attended in the last 3, 4 years, and U.S. Joe Biden has lost election and Trump has been elected, but because of the transition period, so no president of US is not going to come. That's what they say. India, Narendra Modi, it seems, is not attending COP29. European Union President, she again is in a transition phase and she is not going to attend. Russia, Putin, of course, is under threat of arrest by the International Court of Justice and various other reasons. He has never attended. Brazil, again, Bolsonaro, the Lula, sorry, uh, the current president of Brazil, Lula, is not going to attend for some other reason. So major countries whose contribution is very high, the heads of state are not attending. In fact, the third day, 12th November and 13th November, is a World Summit of Leaders at COP29. So now this looks like a COP where big names are not attending. Sometimes it is good because these big names come with private jets and they just say some rhetoric and go away. The problem is uh, whether their attendance is important or not. Now, for me, three things are important. One is fossil fuel phase out. So, diesel, petrol, coal, natural gas, I think all these fossil fuels have to be phased out. But there's a lot of discussion on this, like India, which is dependent on coal, Indonesia, some of these countries which are dependent on, like South Africa, they don't want this phase out immediately on coal. So they want time, they want finance, so that they can shift to cleaner energy systems. So just to look at it, the transition which is being promised by all these contributions, nationally determined contributions, has to be, there has to be justice in that, and there has to be equity in that. So that is what just transition has been brought by ILO. So there are a lot of principles which have been enunciated as part of the just transition. How this transition, which is promised in whether in food, health, agriculture, or transport, energy, all this has to be, the transition has to be just and equitable, so that the poor and the vulnerable are not at a disadvantage, and they are not subject to injustice. So these three are going to be critical on this COP29. So there are, as I mentioned, expectations in nationally determined contributions, new goals, transparency, adaptation, mitigation, loss and damage. Now, overall, just to look at a broad brush, what's happening is denial. Everyone denies they are the what is their contribution. Then they try to ignore their problem, and they try to raise some other problem. There is a lot of neglect, conspiration, confusion. So I think all this is part of the COP negotiations, and the mechanisms within the COP negotiation rooms. Sometimes, small countries or people, vulnerable people feel their participation looks very meek, or their participation is not at all relevant. So coming to Indian scenario, we have been seeing again. This is the latest report which was given by CSE, Center for Science and Environment. They mapped the disasters in India, and in three out of every four districts are vulnerable to floods, droughts, and cyclones in India. So almost 600 districts. I think 500 districts are vulnerable. Then in 2022, only floods cost 35,441 crore loss. That's the estimation. It could be more. We have seen in Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, where I know gushing waters have washed away roads. In Sikkim, even dams have been washed away. So there are a lot of loss, and this 35,000 is a very low estimate. It could be very high. Extreme heat waves in India is impacting, and last year, 2023 has been recorded as the warmest year in the history in India, and of course, even outside. And now 2024 is going to be again a warmest year. So each year the warmth and the temperature is increasing, and that is again causing problems to ordinary Indians. So in 2024, some 3,300 people have lost their lives directly because of climate disasters, compared to 2,755 in 2022. So that's an increase, 18% increase. I think it is more because the heat wave deaths are not properly mapped in India. Lightnings, which are increasing because of climate change, even they are not mapped. So I think the loss of lives is the mapping of the loss of lives is still low, and actual scenario is very scary. Agricultural land is also being affected. In many areas, production has tanked by reduced by 20 to 30%. A lot of hectares has been affected. Some areas, like in Telangana, we have seen at least 2 million hectares has been inundated by floods and the sand casting. So sometimes Agriculture can't be repeated at all because the soil, topsoil is lost. So extreme weather events have also destroyed houses and buildings. Livestock has been lost. But all this looks a very small number when you look at India. But I think this is again, there is no organized data collection methodology in India. So we don't know the impact. But what we are seeing as the events are happening through the news media, I think the loss is very, very high. But only 10% of it is mapped. Now, what is Indian government saying? Indian
3 minutes,
government
sir.
is saying,
You have 3 minutes. Yep.
okay. So Indian government is saying we are going to change energy, fossil fuels. So we are going to shift to renewable energy, and ultimately we want to create a carbon sink by increasing the forest cover.
They
But
are
these are
reduced.
all on.
Forests are
Huh?
gone. When you see Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, even in Telangana, you have seen Musi front, how the
Yes.
long forest has been given for naval radar. They are chopping off trees and forest is gone. And they say, how can you control? And 6.1 contribution from India is the greatest of all G20 countries. Yes, sir. Please, you can conclude. 2 minutes more.
So you can see on the left, you can see what government is trying to do. On the right, what needs to be done. What is the severest crisis? So government is playing about ethanol, digital agriculture, but on the other hand, we have serious problems. So in terms of participation, COP28 is now the largest COP, in the history of COP. 83,000 people have attended last COP at Dubai. This is the highest. They thought, Sharm el Sheikh is the highest, but I think Dubai has top. In Sharm el Sheikh, it was only 49,000, but here 83,000 people have
Can we
attended.
expect now? Last we have 1.5 minutes. So can we expect anything, sir? Middle East countries,
Yeah, yeah.
oil producing countries,
We,
if they are hosting COPs, they have to reduce fuels, but they are the ones who are hosting. What can we expect out of these?
yeah, that is again a issue because Azerbaijan is again a major oil and gas
Yeah.
producing country. So, but Azerbaijan is saying it is committed to what the COP comes up with. So they are not going to influence that. So coming back to India, I think we don't have discussion in India
That's okay.
within India on what is happening. So what I am suggesting is we need a national development council, which is actually there, where all the states and the union continue to sit and discuss climate initiatives and also mitigation and adaptation. And also, I'm suggesting we need a special parliament session on the pledges, agreements, and negotiations which are made at UNFCCC COPs. So far, there has been no discussion. And we need to bring this principle of common but differentiated responsibilities into Indian polity, and also principles of equity, justice, precautionary